to the Missisquoi School District informational meeting. I'm your moderator, Tim Magnet. We have Julie Regenbald. I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right, I'm Julie Regenbald, Superintendent.
Laura McAllister, Business Manager.
Megan Conley, Board Member.
Stephen Scott, Board Member.
Devin Batchelder, Board Member.
Eric Beauregard, Board Member. Don Collins, Board Member and Vice Chair of the school.
The way this is going to run, we're going to do a PowerPoint presentation, and then we're going to ask any questions. I'll take all questions, and I will distribute them to whomever we feel will have the best answer for you. So with that, I guess we're ready to start with the PowerPoint.
Okay. Well, it'd be great if it would work. Here we go. So, just so that you all know, the Missisquoi Valley School Directors are Chris Shepard is the chair, John Collins is the vice chair, Terry O'Shea, Megan Conley, Devin Batchelder, Jen Chevalier, Eric Beauregard, Peter Magnet, and Stephen Scott make up the board.
And what we'll go through tonight in the PowerPoint is here we'll just do a brief overview of the schools that make up the new unified district. We'll go through a few slides, one for each of the schools, just highlighting some of the accomplishments and work that they've done over the past year. We'll talk about a breakdown of how we staff the district, and then we'll bring up the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. Go through all the increases, reductions, and other adjustments, and then talk about how that affects the property taxes for the upcoming year, and then run through the article language that'll appear on the ballot and talk about where and when votes will be held.
The schools that are served by Missisquoi Valley School District are Franklin Central School, Highgate Elementary School, Swanton Elementary School, which all are grade pre-K through 6, and then Missisquoi Valley Union Middle and High School, which is grades 7 through 12.
This is our slide prepared for the Franklin Central School. It's small there. The pre-K enrollment, pre-K through 6 enrollment as of last October was 132 students. A few of the highlights. It says professional development for our staff last year included all of our classroom teachers being trained on and implementing number talks. Number talks are classroom conversations around problems specifically designed to be solved mentally. These number talks help students to develop efficient, flexible, and accurate computation strategies, which also aids them in math problem solving. We're very thankful for the community involvement that makes so many things possible, such as the Franklin Fire Department, fire safety presentations, Four Winds hands-on science, farm to school activities, True Colors art, ski program, speech contest, and the senior dinner. A major highlight from the last year was the completion of our playground project. This project could never have happened without all of the help in so many ways from so many people. We want to thank everyone, again, for the overwhelming support that this project received. We are proud of the teamwork that exists with students, parents, staff, school board, and community, as evidenced by the awards and recognitions that Franklin has received based on outstanding student academic achievement and school environment.
So this slide was put together by Pat Hartnett, principal of Highgate Elementary School. The October 1st enrollment for the pre-K through 6 school was 294 students. Under academic proficiency, the Highgate School saw a dynamic improvement, a dramatic improvement in our math aspect scores, and are having, sorry, there's a glare on my page, pardon me, are hoping to continue that trend this May when we take the annual tests again. Our literacy scores remained positive but experienced some stagnation while we focused so intently on improving our math scores. Our professional development this year and going into next year will be geared toward renewing our literacy focus and begin a long overdue identification of our needs for more science in our curriculum. Nearly our entire professional staff has been taking a year-long course called Mind Play to understand the latest research on how students learn to read. High-quality staffing. Each year, we realize more benefits from our professional learning communities. Teachers from each grade level meet at least twice a week. for math and literacy, biweekly for behavior, to plan, assess, analyze, and reflect upon student learning. Positive climate for learning. We continue to try and build emotionally strong children with our emphasis on PBIS, which is positive behavioral interventions and supports, and restorative practices. We take seriously our challenge of meeting the social and emotional needs of our students while simultaneously protecting the integrity of the learning environment. Our increasing emphasis on building our students' resilience and perceptions of safety, community, and student voice through PBIS and restorative practices, and a declining emphasis on the use of punishment is our way of seeing education as a marathon, not a sprint.
And for Swanton Elementary School, the last of the elementary schools, as of October 1st, total enrollment of 626 students. Swanton Elementary is continuing to see steady enrollment and is even increasing enrollment. We currently have 98 kindergarten students spread across 5 classrooms. For the 2020-21 year, we are planning to add an additional first grade classroom, bringing the total number of first grade rooms to 5 to accommodate this growth. The administration is also continuing to work hard to meet the emotional and social needs of students by contracting with NCSS, which is the Northwest Counseling Support Services, for board certified behavior analysts. And for this year, we also contracted for a school-based autism consultant in order to help create programs to support this group of learners. We are also currently involved in a district initiative in the creation of an social and emotional learning SEL curriculum through the facilitation of CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. In addition, the professional learning communities, PLCs, continue to be the foundation of our teaching and learning in Swanton School. And this allows for teachers and administrators to come together to make plans for the future. And finally, the Swanton community, under the fantastic leadership of Debbie Winters and Justina Jeanette, worked very hard to make our dream of a brand new playground a reality. And an outstanding effort. We are so incredibly grateful for everybody's donations and time and support in these efforts.
Sorry, those are ready. Missisquoi Valley Middle and High School. As of October 1, 2019, the enrollment grade 7 through 8 was 252 students. Grade 9 through 12 was 574 students. MVU offers a wide variety of courses for students in grades 7 through 12, including in the arts, foreign language, business, family and consumer sciences, and our unique and popular agricultural program. An increasing number of our students are taking advantage of rigorous academic opportunities such as early college, dual enrollment, AP courses, honors credential, work-based learning placements, and our personalized learning option, Humanities in Action. MVU students contribute hundreds of hours to various community service projects such as Operation Happiness, Red Cross Blood Drive, Make-A-Wish Dinner and Auction, visitations to various nursing homes and senior centers.
This slide just shows a high-level summary of the staffing throughout the district, broken down by category. The top one showing 11 FTEs of general administration. FTEs are full-time equivalents, so for instance, 2 half-time positions would be represented here as 1 FTE. That general administration category are things like the superintendent, director of special education, early childhood, curriculum director, business manager, etc. The building administration, that's where we place the principals and assistant principals, along with the athletic director here at MVU and behavioral management here at MVU. A couple others, and then professionals, where the bulk of the staffing is. Those are our all teachers and special educators, professional behavioral intervention staff. So that's those in the schools and classrooms. The support group and the support positions are all of our paras, some behavioral support staff, custodians, office staff in the schools and central office, registrars, librarians, positions like that. And then the contracted piece are those positions, the hours we get from outside agencies, primarily behavioral support from NCSS, along with our truancy officer and our school resource officer, which comes from outside agency as well.
All right, so an overview of the budget as adopted by the school board on January 21st. The total expense budget is $37,906,229 minus the anticipated revenue of $9,161,226. Leaves us with a per pupil spending estimated at $15,626. And again, I just want to point out that it is an estimate only at this time. We need to wait for the state to set the yield rate. And then just looking at a breakout of the general ed versus special education. As you can see, 79% or $29,829,046 is allocated to general education, and $8,077,183 or 21% is dedicated to the special education department.
As with any service organization, the majority of expenses fall within our salary and benefits category. 73% of the total budget is to pay for the salary and benefits. We do have a large increase in health insurance premiums for next year, 12.9%, which is over $400,000 that's built into that, that we had to contend with through other areas in the budget. The other big categories here, you'll see busing, transportation's at $1.7 million, which is everything to and from school, including the morning and afternoon routes, as well as any extracurricular busing that needs to occur. And then we have purchase services and tuition, just a lot of expenses related to just needing outside agencies to come in, or just anything where work is done that's not done by our employed staff, and just anything else that our students may need. And we'll get into some of those more detailed categories on the next slide.
Okay, so here we're taking a look at the current year, fiscal year 20 budget, as it is associated with the fiscal year 21 proposed. I just wanted to point out that these are basically the function codes, or the way that the state requires us to sort of route our chart of accounts together. That is changing. Anybody who's watched any of the MVSD board meeting recordings has heard me say over and over that the state is implementing a new chart of accounts with new business rules, and they're still working through those. And so all of the school districts and supervisory units in the state are also working through that. So some of these codes are new. I just want to point out the grounds and upkeep and maintenance, about 3/4 of the way down. You'll notice there's a 0 in this year. Really, that's just a shift to the 64,650 in fiscal year 21. Those are not new added costs, but it's a shift from other lines based on the new business rules and new chart of accounts. The same thing with the facilities and building improvements. So I may talk about those as we go through, but basically this is how the state is asking us to categorize our expenses. Just to highlight a few of them, instructional programs, those costs are directly related to student instruction. That's our gen ed teachers, the support staff, general education, supplies and materials. Special ed, that's pretty self-explanatory. Those are costs related to the special ed services and students' IEPs. Those costs are currently reimbursed at about 56.5%. Behavior management, you'll notice an increase about almost halfway down. It looks like that's a large increase as well, but that's really a shift. We're streamlining all of our behavior supports into that line now, again, based on the state business rules. And so some of those costs used to be up under instructional or even under guidance, and we're just putting them all in one category now. Professional development, that includes PD for all teachers and support staff, and that's part of our union agreements that we have. and then also PD for any other staff, including central office. General administration, about a little more than halfway down. That's the superintendent's executive assistant, Medicaid clerk, central office expenses such as legal costs, copiers, our office rent, and supplies and such. Other administration, that includes, as Devin had pointed out, the special ed and ECP directors and that support staff and associated supplies to their administrative supplies for those offices. Fiscal Services, that's the business office staff. We take care of all AP and payroll and grants management, food service, and many other administrative functions. Plant operations and maintenance, that's for about 3/4 of the way down. That includes everyday care and maintenance and operations for 4 schools, 6+ buildings. Obviously, we're only counting main buildings. MVU has several other small facilities. Facility building and improvements, that's, I pointed that out earlier, that's almost all the way at the bottom. That's a shift for larger scale capital improvements. It's a new code put out by the state. And so basically they're asking us to separate normal repair and maintenance items and some of those larger ticket items now they want in this other category. And then long-term debt, and that's the bottom line. That is our bond payments, principal and interest on the Franklin bond, the Highgate bond, and the MVU bond.
So the proposed increases and adjustments that got us to this proposed budget. Currently, both union support and professional staff contracts are being negotiated. As Laura mentioned before, the health insurance premium costs increase this year, projected to be about 13% for all employees, which is something we knew was coming at us, so we were pretty planful about this budget. The facility bond debt payment, principal and interest for the Highgate School is a new increase to this budget. And we also made careful investments in building and grounds, repair and maintenance, and capital improvements, as we've discussed at multiple board meetings, and the community made very clear to us that we need to not defer maintenance, and we need to be careful that if we have a bond, we then need to maintain our buildings. So we also had an increase in our student transportation contracts. It's the 3rd year of a contract with our busing company, which has a small increase. So all of those increases that were facing the district, the board worked with administration very carefully to look at our positions and what was required, and we looked at student enrollment, we looked at class size, we looked at course offerings, and how many students and teachers were required in all areas. So we did very carefully through attrition, which really means if we know someone is leaving, so somebody is retiring or somebody is choosing not to come, we looked at every single position that we know of so far and examined, do we need to replace that position because of class sizes and so forth? Or is this a position that we can eliminate and reallocate carefully and responsibly? So the administrative team did make recommendations for the board to consider, and we've reduced a few positions where it made sense, and actually we added a position where it made sense as well. A good example, when reading the Swanton page, we needed to increase a classroom teacher in 1st grade because of the number of students going into 1st grade next year. Instead of just adding that, there was another position that had been vacant all year that the administration determined was really not necessary and difficult to fill. So they offset that increase with a reduction elsewhere. So also the high school department budgets, the administration here worked very closely with the departments to make sure that the departments had everything that they needed, but that they were very careful in asking for just what they needed. As I mentioned before, additional needs were, we looked for an offset wherever we wanted to add. And in this budget, definitely there have been some shifts, as Laura described earlier. Sometimes you'll see an increase The behavior management's a good example. It's not an actual increase, it's a moving of things from other parts of the budget into that new line item.
So now we'll start to talk about how this translates to property tax amounts. So the total proposed budget is $37,906,229. That's offset by the revenues that we receive, the 9.1 million roughly. And that leaves us with what's called education spending. And this is the amount that's used in the calculation of the property taxes. So that's $28,745,003. That's divided by our estimated equalized pupil count, and that's for all schools within the district, 1,839.6, which results in spending per equalized pupil of $15,626. Using an estimated property dollar equivalent yield from the state, we're able to calculate what that estimated equalized homestead tax rate will be for 2021. And you can see here the proposed budget is an increase of about a half a cent per hundred. So Julie talked about the increases we had to benefits, as well as our deferred maintenance, trying to fund those buildings, and we also have the bond projects that we're paying for, and so we did have to make some cuts to try to keep this number, which is really the part we can control. We'll talk about the CLA in a second, the common level of appraisal. But the way we're able to keep this close is through those cuts to positions, through the attrition that Julie mentioned.
And then just a bit of comparison to others, looking at the current fiscal year 20, the actual spending per equalized pupil came in at $15,233. For the fiscal year 21, we are looking at a modest increase to $15,626. You'll note that the state average for last year was $15,521. For the current year, it was $16,235. And they are estimating for fiscal year 21 spending of $17,133. So despite this slight increase that we are expecting, it is over $1,500 less than the estimated fiscal year 21 state average. So still working very hard to keep our budget lean and while still providing all of the services that our students need.
Now, the last step in calculating the estimated adjusted tax rate is the common level of appraisal. It's a number that's calculated by the state of Vermont. It's an effort to kind of line up the town appraised values with what the state believes is the kind of average market value in our towns. And so here you see the percentages in that second row. Kind of what this tells us is that when the state looks at average town appraisal, Swanton seems to be about what the market value is. Highgate's town appraisals are slightly higher, and Franklin's are slightly lower than the market suggests. So the state says you ought to pay taxes on the market value of your home, so they make an adjustment based on these percentages, and so that's why there's a different tax rate in each of the three towns, because it's that tax rate's compared to your town assessed value. So we had decreases in the common level of appraisal in all three towns from 2020 to 21 when we look at the tax rates. The positive there is it says our property values are going up. The negative is it means our taxes are going up as well. So this is another piece that we contend with as we try to keep total expenses for the school district at a reasonable level, while at the same time making sure we're providing what our students need. Despite these growing taxes.
So providing some estimations on the tax rate impact, if we take a homestead value of $200,000, looking at Franklin, for the fiscal year 20, your billed tax was $2,830. The estimated tax for 21 is $2,964, so that is an estimated increase of $134. Over in Highgate, We're looking at an annual estimated increase of $99 from $2,692 to $2,791. And in Swanton, we are looking at an increase from $2,783 to $2,850 for a total increase of $67.
So this is essentially what I mentioned on the last slide on the CLA. It's just highlighting it's something that is out of control of the school district. It's just something we have to factor in as we look at the total expenses to try to make sure taxes stay at a reasonable rate. And it's important to note, although it's also important not to build a budget based on this, 70 to 80% of the taxpayers in Franklin County do receive some level of income sensitivity on their tax bill, so not everyone will see the full effect of this increase, although we understand that it certainly will affect some people, and so that is part of our deliberation.
So the articles that you'll see on the ballot on town meeting day, Article 1 is to elect from the legal voters of said district the following officers: a moderator for a term of 1 year, a clerk for a term of 1 year, a treasurer for a term of 1 year, an MVSD school director for a term of 3 years from Franklin, an MVSD school director for a term of 3 years from Highgate, an MVSD school director for a term of 3 years from Swanton.
And the current candidates for election, for moderator, we have Timothy Magnet, MVSD clerk, Nola Gilbert, MVSD treasurer, Georgette Roddy, and for school board, Franklin is open for a write-in, Highgate, Stephen Scott, and Swanton, Terry O'Shea.
And Joanne, is it all right if I mention at this time, Joanne Johnston, JOHNSTON, is open for write-in candidacy in Franklin.
Article 2, shall the voters authorize the Board of School Directors to make available school facilities and equipment for specified public purposes if those purposes appear to be in the best interest of the residents of the district, due consideration being given to efficient, economical, and appropriate use of the facilities and equipment.
And finally, the proposed budget, Article 3. Shall the voters of the Missisquoi Valley School District approve the school directors to expend $37,906,229, which is the amount the school directors have determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $15,626 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 2.6% higher than spending for the current year.
Okay, and Article 4 is a pretty typical article historically. It says, shall the voters of the Missisquoi Valley School District authorize the Board of Directors of the said school district to borrow money to pay the current expenditures in anticipation of taxes and to sign notes for that purpose. Every year, we do need to open up a line of credit and borrow only as needed to operate for the first couple of months that school is in session.
And polling places and times, of course, Super Tuesday, March 3rd. In Franklin, you can vote at Franklin Elementary School at 15 School Street, Highgate at Highgate Elementary School, and in Swanton at the Village Municipal Complex. All polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m.
And people can get absentee ballots still, I think, and you should contact your town clerk for that if you're going to be out of town, or just like the convenience of an absentee ballot.
That concludes.
It absolutely does. We just want
Any
to thank everyone.
questions? Yes. Could you state your name, please?
Hi, Swanier. So my question is, with Act 6 and the state changing the chart of accounts, are we this as close to what they're requiring now for the future? Will there be changes?
There, the business rules that were supposed to be out, I'm sorry, am I allowed to talk without?
Yes, you are, but answer to me, answer, that
sorry.
way I kind of keep the peace.
Sorry. I'd say we're about halfway there realistically. The business rules were supposed to be out much earlier than they were. We started adopting the new chart of accounts this year as sort of a step in the right direction. We know how hard it's going to be to do that, and so moving from the local budgets and trying to merge those all together into an MVSD budget, we sort of took that first step in that merger, but not having true and thorough business rules to follow until about a month and a half ago from the state. We did the best that we could, so we're continuing that right now.
Does that answer your question, Todd?
Yes, of course.
Any other questions? Yes. Name, please.
Brandy Maskell. I know that there's definitely been some line item shifts and this very well could be just taken from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I noticed on the principal's office, there's $131,000 increase on other services. Can we just get a little bit of clarification of what that might consist of?
Who wants that question? Laura?
We moved all communication costs into one code, and so that includes all telephone and internet costs, which is pretty substantial now with all the E911 compliance issues and new phone systems that are required. And so that was a shift. Some schools historically had that under instructional programs. Some had it under their facility budget, and so yeah, it's a shift. Yeah.
More questions? Todd?
So I attended a couple of the regular meetings where budget was discussed, working documents were had by the board directors, and I know Devin, for example, asked to have numbers of for how many positions are in these categories. I'm wondering how come this, I guess I'm just gonna come right out and say it, this is vague at best. You've got some of it in the presentation, but pretty much salaries in any category except for superintendent, which is only one superintendent for our district, is your guess of how many actual salaries are coming out and how come the public doesn't know that information without having to ask.
A question or a statement?
The question is, how come the public doesn't know this information without having to ask for it, and why it's not in this report?
Want to try that, Devin?
So, thanks, Ty. Sorry, Tim.
Go ahead.
These budget presentations and the reports, we try to hit as many levels of detail as we possibly can. We understand that we are not going to answer every single question in a few pages here. We really appreciate active participation from the public to ask those questions of us in these meetings and ask for those reports. All that stuff absolutely is available to anyone who asks. If we have it here with us, we'll answer the question. If we don't, that's something that can be distributed at a future time once we are able to assemble that information. So if that and any other reports, levels of detail that you or anyone else in the public is interested in receiving, please send those requests to us so that we can satisfy those.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes,
I
Don.
would like to know in regard to that question, is the gentleman asking for how many people, how many personnel, FTEs are under each salary category?
Yes, that would be my question.
So a number next to, say, guidance services or library services or...
You'd like to know in the columns, like in the principals, how many principals we're paying at that salary level?
How many people you're paying in those categories?
Right.
I know in years past, just for Highgate, because that's what I'm familiar with, there used to be, this is going into more detail, there was the steps of what level each staff was on, in the chart of what those steps paid according to the negotiations. This is a comment. There's no reason why it wasn't, those weren't included in this paperwork tonight, other than,
So what you're saying is you'd like to see next year the scale put in plus the teachers.
yes.
So
And
you-
how many, that dollar value, how many people that represents.
Connie.
Connie B. or Highgate. I have a question about tuition, and I should remember this, I don't. So, on page 24, under object or function 1100, it says student tuition, and that is, next year is $471,571. I don't remember, so, for what students are we paying tuition? Or, I mean, what is that tuition cost? Maybe
What?
about-
Okay. Do you want to try that, Julie?
Sure. Those would be students who are not eligible for special education, who are sent elsewhere for their education. Places, schools such as Project SOAR and others.
Okay. And then in the next function down, 560 is student tuition, and I'm assuming that are placements for special education
Correct.
students. And the third question about tuition is MVU receiving, educating students that we've received tuition for?
Yes.
And do we know about how many we are?
How many students? No, but if you look at page 31, you will see that tuition revenue amount there and anticipated revenues.
Yes, I do.
I think we're estimating at 50 students, but I believe the actual is a little bit more than that. It's probably closer to 60, but we're usually a little conservative with our anticipated revenues, so.
And so, in the number of students that were calculated, were tuition students counted in that calculation? To get a per pupil cost?
Yes, it's netting the anticipated revenue from those tuition students is one of the
That's
revenues that's
included.
included to offset that net spending, yes.
Okay, and I would,
Primarily Sheldon and Albert.
okay, and I have to say, there are times when I don't agree with Ty, but there are lots of times when I do, and under all my categories, I said, how many? So, I think it was a good suggestion.
So you're saying the same thing as Ty, we'd like to see
Yes.
next year, we'd like to see how many tuition students we're getting.
Well,
And-
no, not tuition students. I'm just saying in each category that has teachers and has non-professional positions, a number to say how many people that represents.
Okay, the exact same question, the exact
Yes.
same statement that Ty made, she's reiterating the same statement that we'd like to see next year, the numbers besides, the number of people besides the salary numbers.
I think that gives us a sense of how big we are now or how not big we are. And I think it helps to put it in perspective. Coming from Highgate, we did that by listing everybody who was working in our school. So one could figure that out. We could still, we can't do that anymore. So I think it's a piece of information I would like to have.
Jay,
Well, I'd like to,
state your name, so,
Jay Denault from Franklin.
thank you.
This was the same issue that we had in our first MERS budget, where we expressed our concern about not knowing how many FTEs we're going to employ. So I'd like to add my voice to Connie's and Ty's. I came here tonight partly because of that. As this budget format, although I understand the board is following what they perceive to be their responsibility to develop a budget based on major categorical spending function. But this budget doesn't provide us with the information proposed to understand how many FTEs are employed and how changes in the FTEs affect our local schools. Which for me is important if I'm trying to consider voting to support a budget. I'd like to know whether or not we're gonna receive the teachers that we need to provide our kids with a quality education, that the quality and variety of educational opportunities as described in statute, and the goals of Act 46. The other thing is that the budget under plant operation maintenance, it doesn't cite the actual capital building projects that are being addressed in each of the schools. For example, one of the concerns that I have in Franklin, it's hard to believe if it is, that school is 30 years old. It has the same computer system that operates its HVAC systems and its heating systems. And I mean, 30 years old for a computerized operating system is getting old. So I noticed the parking lot has tar in the cracks to avoid the condition that the Highgate parking lot is, so eventually there's going to be some. So I would assume that those issues would be addressed under capital building projects from time to time. So this budget doesn't describe any of those actual projects that are being undertaken or even contemplated. The other thing is, this budget doesn't, it's sort of related to that, this budget doesn't provide the information for voters to understand what the status is of their reserve funds. I don't see any information in the budget that states whether those reserve funds are still there, or whether they're committed, or anything of that nature. I mean, there's nothing.
Do you mean I'm sorry.
So those are reserve funds that were voted and approved on by the voters, taxpayers, for example, the regroup for MVU. I don't see any information in this budget that allows me to understand what the status of those reserve funds. And I believe Highgate has a reserve fund too. So I don't see information that allows me to understand what the status of those reserve funds are. The other thing is that there are...
Can I stop you for a minute? If you wanna, do you want an answer for the reserve funds? I'll allow you back the floor, but let's take it piece by piece if you wanna do that, or are you just making a statement?
I'd just like to make a statement.
Okay,
and you guys can decide how you want to deal with it.
Right, if you wanted an answer to that, I'd get an answer to that and then we move on.
So if I may continue, the other issue is that there are 24 FTEs currently employed at the central office, otherwise known as the supervisory union budget. The cost associated with the supervisory union budget, without considering the special education positions that have been transferred to the supervisory union, there are costs associated with the superintendent's budget that are dispersed among 11 different categories within this budget. It makes it really difficult for a voter to understand what the cost is of operating the central office. I point out that Act 46, Section 8B, Paragraph 2 states, ensures transparency and accountability for member districts and the public at large, including transparency and accountability in relation to the supervisory union budget, which may include a process by which the electorate votes directly whether to approve the proposed supervisory union budget. That's quoted right out of statute, Act 46. With all due respect, we can't find the costs that are associated with the superintendent's budget within this budget format, much less vote on them. Although we are voting on them, but we don't know that we are because of the way it's put together, it's verse, so it's almost impossible to tell what costs are associated directly with the superintendent's office. I came here because I felt that these shortcomings could be construed as being not meeting goals 4 and goals 5 of Act 46, noting that our first year budget increased our net ed spending by $2 million, and now we're being asked for another $904,000. It seems like a lot of money, and it doesn't seem like I would be able to construe that we're meeting the goals of goal 5. I realize that you've done your best to try to create a budget that represents the least amount of increase, and some of the information you brought tonight gave me a little bit of clarification, because I was comparing numbers that I had in previous reports, the current student per pupil costs in this current budget as described, not actual. But it turns out the $15,626 compared to what was reported to us in our last budget represents a $468 increase in the per pupil costs. Now I realize those figures change because of actual numbers, but nonetheless, That represents on the surface of things, on the face of things, a 3.1% increase in our computer costs. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I know I talked too long, but I had an opportunity to engage in a conversation a couple weeks ago with a number of different members of the legislature, actually quite a few of them, and our Secretary of Education. And I asked a simple question, which is, what happens if a merger governance structure that was either approved by a school district or forced upon a school district fails to meet the goals of Act 46? I'm going to read to you, I'll be quick, I'm going to read to you his responses to me. This is January 21st, 2020. This is an email conversation that's been ongoing with as many as 60 members of the legislature, myself and Secretary Branch and others. He says there's no charge or delegated authority to school boards. There is no requirement. Let me read this. I'll read it exactly word for word. There is no charge or delegated authority to school boards to achieve the goals of Act 46. There is no requirement and therefore no exemption. Here is the section of the Act with the goals, and he goes on to cite the goals. So that's the first statement he says, which is quite astounding. The next one is, I asked a question, I'm sure you can imagine, I'm sure you can imagine, this is me speaking, you can imagine my skepticism in creating goals which have no means of measuring success. While it is unlikely the AOE would undertake the operation and administration of every school failing to meet the goals of Act 46, local corrective action plans would be a more effective and accurate use of resources. He writes to me, this is his own words, your skepticism should be directed to the General Assembly. In my experience, this has been fairly common occurrence in Vermont education policy, law, and regulations not to establish clear measures of success. One more comment. He writes to me, I do not think there is anything in Act 46 or this rule, however, that speaks about districts being required to, quote, provide evidence which will be used to determine success or failure, as illogical as that may seem. So I originally came here thinking that we were failing to meet the goals of Act 46, but if it turns out it doesn't matter if we do or not, according to the Secretary of Education. So I leave you with those thoughts.
Thank you, Jay. Any more questions or comments? I guess I apologize, Jay, because there is comments can be made too. Yes, Don?
Just a point of clarification before the board asks their staff and then reporting next year to address some of the issues Connie, Jay, and Ty brought up. Are we looking for two numbers? Are we looking for FTEs or number of pupils, both, or one? Because we can report, I mean, not number of people, number of employees. Number of employees do not necessarily mean that they're all full-time. So are we looking for an FTE number?
No, I'm not looking for an FTE number. FTE number means absolutely nothing to me. Because two halves make a whole, and it doesn't.
So you want to know just how many people, is that half-time, quarter-time, three-quarters time, or full-time?
In my opinion, yes, but I just.
But I don't want to be sitting here next year and having, asking Laura and Julie and the other people there to do that. It's probably a pretty simple calculation, and then have somebody say that's not the number we want.
I'd be happy with FTEs, and I must say, I should give you kudos for, because you had it in your presentation, because I wrote it down. And I think FTEs will give us a better sense of how many full-time, I mean, they equal full-time positions. So if you just give just a number, then you might have the 7th grade social studies teacher only teaching, 4 times of the day. And that doesn't count as a whole person.
Yes.
For employees that are only part-time, we are still providing insurance benefits for them, correct?
We are following the ACA guidelines, which basically says that if anybody's over 30 hours, that's full time.
Okay. That's the only discrepancy I could see where it would make a big difference as far as if we're looking at FTEs or just number of employees, because that's going to impact your insurance benefits and
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
As far as salaries, though, I would agree with Connie that really it's your FTEs would be a much more accurate reflection of those costs. Just because we do have some people that are like a 0.2, so it could skew the numbers quite significantly.
That also jives also with how the Department of Ed puts that information out. So those who want to look in there and you have two different sets of numbers could cause confusion.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't have a question, but I would like to make a comment. On page 31, thank the school board for putting in the ag program tuition. Because prior to this year, although I was out last year ill, this is the first time that I've ever seen that the ag program, the money that is received is noted. It has always been included in other. So the comment that I want to make is that the total cost, the total amount of money that comes in for the ag program is $156,417. Our total operating budget for the ag program was $42,562.50. That means that from the ag tuition, there's $113,854.50 that goes towards paying the salaries and benefits of the ag teachers. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is, and I have people that stop and say, my goodness, sometimes the strong language is stronger than that. My goodness, it must be expensive to operate a sugaring operation and a land lab and shops and have a barn with animals and a greenhouse. Actually, it's the cheapest program in the school. And that's what, this is the first time that I've had a chance to say that at a public meeting, because it's always been hidden. Thank you for.
The only one shame was I didn't make you introduce yourself, Jim.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jim Mason.
Thank you, Jim. Jay?
I'd just like to thank Jim for all his time and effort, all the years he spent at this school. Can't even begin to think of how many kids we've rescued, Jim.
No, I was one of them, Jay. I had Jim for a teacher. Yvonne?
Mr. Moderator,
Say your
Yvonne
name,
Dandaran.
Thank you.
I haven't heard anything tonight about the health of the school and the students. Where are we at? Where do we stand, like across the state? Where are the students at? How are they doing? How's the faculty doing with the students? I noticed during the presentation that the total student numbers seem low. I don't know, are they up? Where are we at? I mean, that's why I'm asking where the health of the school is presently.
Can I ask you this question? You're talking the health. You're not talking their blood pressure now,
No,
you're talking
no.
their grade averages,
Yes,
and your numbers.
yes.
Who wants that one?
Well, we got a couple of answers there. In terms of enrollment, we're pretty stable. We have some schools where the enrollment's going up, some where it's declining. Overall, I think, what did we go down for equalized pupils?
Not quite 4, a little less than 4.
Less than 4, which is pretty good considering those around us. In terms of our kids' achievement and the overall health of our schools, we are doing pretty well. I mean, none of our schools are identified. We're making gains. We're not ever where we want to be. We always want more of our kids achieving at higher levels. But the growth is solid, and that's been very impressive. And our pressure is to just keep on that and make sure our teachers have the best tools they have and our kids have the best prepared teachers in front of them with the best materials and curriculum. So we are not sitting on our laurels in any way at all, and there's always work to do. But for example, one of the slides talked about professional learning for teachers in early literacy. Sometimes when we spend a lot of time focusing on math and you have new teachers, all of a sudden the literacy practices are on the back burner, which is not acceptable. So we've been really focused. 2 of our elementary schools have been doing that this year, and then the 3rd is finishing up their math training and focusing on the reading next year. So we have strong showing in our schools and constant improvement. It's actually nice now. You're not usually going to hear me say that the agency of ed does some nice things. But one of the things that is positive is they don't just look at, did you meet the bar? They look at, are you moving toward the bar? And are you moving rigorously? And our schools have been.
Yes?
So I'd like to add a comment to that. Get into a little bit more details. So it's disappointing to see, like, I come here to these meetings every year, and it's, you know, I know that parents work and they've got jobs and whatnot, there's obligations elsewhere and whatnot, but there's not very many of us here that come to these meetings. 2 years ago tonight, I stood up here and I read a letter from my nephew having concerns about the school and his concern as to where he was in the school at the time he was a sophomore, where he was headed, the grading system, amongst other things. And at that night, I don't want to throw anyone on the bus here, the school principal came to me, thanked me for reading the letter. And school principal approached my nephew, and he was told that he was going to be given the time and opportunity to express his thoughts, his concerns as to where MVU was at the time and what he thought MVU should be looking at to make things more appealing and look better for students that are ahead of him and behind him. The unfortunate thing is that he was never given that time or opportunity. So I'm here tonight asking the board, can you do something moving forward that faculty, administration, reach out to the kids, talk to them, ask them questions, have a questionnaire for them to help you help them. Because it's quite obvious to me that there's not enough parents, and I'm not saying that they don't care, I'm just saying that they're not here. So if you can't reach out to the parents and get the parents' attention, you've got the kids that you can reach out to and they will talk to you. If you have like my nephew for example, he spoke up. That means he cares. And I'm sure he's not the only one. So I'm asking you to reach out to them and see what you can get for information. Their information is going to be, to me, very valuable to the administration. And something else that I've mentioned before here is, do you reach out to students that went beyond the MVU education? In other words, didn't stop at just graduating from high school. Went on to either a trade school, went to college, university, whatever. Have you reached out to them 2-3 years after they left here? Where are they at now? How did MVU help? Or how could have MVU helped more to help them succeed better where they're at today? Those are things that I've brought up in the past. I haven't seen or heard anything of the administration reaching out to these kids that could give you valuable information. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes.
Just to touch on that point of reaching out to the kids, you know, Highgate, I teach in Highgate, we, for the past 2 years, have done student perception surveys, and we've adapted them developmentally for the grade levels, but really to get a good sense of how the kids feel about the school climate. Do you feel like your teacher knows you well? Do you feel like your teacher, you know, knows what's going on? And so, I mean, it's just on a Google form that we give to the kids 3 times a year just to check in. It's all anonymous, but it's linked to the teacher so they can see what class but not what students. But just little things like that, like a Google form that has been really helpful in Highgate.
Thank you.
Just in response to sort of outreach efforts, it's one thing when we're talking about students that are currently enrolled, we know where they are, we know how to reach them. Once students go on, especially those students who have school email addresses, having consistent contact information becomes very difficult. So it becomes an issue of resources within the district and allocating those resources to find these students, verify their contact information, and gather the information. I absolutely agree that it's important, and we can learn a lot from students, but I think at the same time, we need to understand that it's a resource strain.
Thank you. Don?
Mr. Hartman's here. I don't know what's happened recently, but for a number of years, guidance, that was one of the functions of the guidance department. There's a guidance department here every 5 years or every 3 years, whatever, try to make contact with graduates.
I'd have to go back and research that.
I know there used to be a requirement to try to do
At
that.
one time, we did attempt to on a fairly regular basis.
We didn't get them all, but you might have got 80, 90%.
As Megan pointed out, it's not easy to keep in touch with those that are 5, 6, 7 years out.
Thanks your hand, Jay.
Just to touch on a little bit what Yvonne was talking about, having been one of the more outspoken critics of student performance within our schools over the years. I want all of you to know that I don't do that to be insulting. I do that because I want more for our kids. And listening to you talk, I truly do hope we're making progress, but I have to point out that in 2018, our aspect test scores showed that our 9th grade students that achieved proficiency or above with that was at just slightly over 16%. That continues to worry me because that seems quite low. That was just 2 years ago. So I hope that has improved, but 16% leaves a long ways to go to get to where we want to be. And we all know that there still remains an achievement gap amongst our schools. A fairly substantial one, but not correct. Even today, not mentioning schools specifically, but there is a large achievement gap which is affecting some of our students that attend this school at 7th grade. So I hope that continues to be a focus. I'm always going to be having an eye on student performance stats.
Thank you, Jay. Connie?
There's some opportunities the kids in our school have now that didn't happen when my kids were in school, and it's in the MVU report. Students are also encouraged to take advantage of dual enrollment for classes available through the Vermont State Colleges. They can participate in Vermont's early college program, or they can take part in a cooperative work-based learning experience offered at MVU. So for the real go-getters, and hopefully the guidance department can get a sense of the go-getters and the ones that, these are great opportunities. These are great opportunities.
Any other questions or statements?
Question, after the vote, after Tuesday, how are we going to find out results? Because last year, it was difficult at best to get results of who our new board members were. I mean, I reached out to the town clerk, they hadn't heard any results. I want to know, leaving here tonight, how I'm going to know Thursday, whether the budget passed, Thursday after, Tuesday, whether the budget passed, and who are the rest of the articles at.
Julie?
So and last year there was some confusion from the different town clerks may have known, but it had to come out from central, from the clerk, the elected clerk. So I will put it on Facebook, the Missisquoi Valley School District Facebook page. We will get it on the website as soon as we can. I don't have the ability to put things on the website myself, so I will be working with someone else to make sure that gets up there as quickly as we can.
And at the town level too, as far as town clerks, so they're gonna be able to see.
I will email them the results, so that if you were to reach out, they should be able to answer that question.
Our office as well.
And of course, central office as well. Yep. It's awfully hard. I know that just as a long-term administrator, our local votes don't usually make the news, right? You know, usually the messenger will want me to text them and things go out on, but not everybody goes on Twitter or does all those things. And you just want to know, did the budget pass or not? Is the town clerk the person that, you know, we have one person, but those kinds of questions you want an answer to the next day. And if it's not if it's Burlington or something, it doesn't hit the newspaper necessarily for a while. So I want to push out as many places as possible. If people have suggestions, where to publicize that information, please let me know.
Connie?
As being the newbie, as suggested to police in Highgate, I get sent down to count their ballots in Swanton. And I'll tell you, some of those are late nights
Right.
when they're being counted. And I'm suspecting maybe this time they'll be as well because of more things. So that is part of the issue. I do know that the superintendent typically is notified, and I think maybe someone calls our town clerk.
Yeah.
Not me, but someone does.
Okay.
Just one more thought, Ms. Moderator. Gotta go along with what Yvonne's saying. When was the last time a new face appeared up on the Missisquoi Hall of Fame?
Last September?
What we have,
Was it last September?
Oh, yes.
was it 3, Jay, new inductees last year? 4?
Yeah, I don't think there's been a break in that.
Okay. Just curious.
And I think the two people that you talked to, if you have someone you want to nominate, I'm pretty sure, are Jack Aldridge or Ed Daniel. Is that right, Jay? I think that anybody who wants to nominate someone for the Van Beal Hall of Fame, the person you talked to was either Jack Aldridge or Ed Daniel, I believe.
No, they can contact one or two that's here last week.
Can you hear that a little louder? Contact who, if you want to
Lori
nominate?
Tugas here at the school.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Yes.
If by chance the budget doesn't pass, will there be another informational meeting where we find out about where the cuts were made before that next vote?
Yes, that's anytime you have a budget go before the voters, you have to have an informational meeting. Absolutely.
Dennis.
Dennis Boucher, I'd like to just give a public thank you to the board. I think this year has had to have been an incredible transition year, and I think that for anybody to volunteer kind of for being a part of that, it's impressive. And I'm sure the administration has worked tirelessly to make this all happen. And unfortunately, having kind of been in those seats before, I've got a small appreciation for what you guys are doing, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Louise LeBombard from Swanton. I was wondering, when are your meetings held? And where do you post the fact that they're held?
So the meetings are the first and third Tuesday. We have on our school district website, we have a little table because the first of the month is typically here at MVU. Of course, in March, it's going to be different because we want it to be sort of equal between the schools. And then the second meeting of the month is in an elementary school and it rotates. So we have a little table. In terms of postage, they're posted at the schools, they're posted at the clerk's offices. And if I were Pierrette Bouchard, I could tell you with more specificity, but they are posted publicly. They're also on our website.
One suggestion I would have, the Swanton Village complex is a very busy place. Lots of people in and out, paying bills. It would be a good place to post that. I think there might be more people that would come.
It's good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I guess, thank everybody for coming. Is there any last statements the board or the administration would like to say? Well, thank everybody for coming, and it's been a great meeting.
Yes, please. Bring 3 friends.
All right, well,